Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8.52. Excuse me. We're going to continue playing here as we're going through the preparations for I was going to say the Great War, but that's World War I, for the upcoming Mega War. Oh, wait a minute. We have a new law here. War economy. Now, wish we could go to mixed industry. That would be much more beneficial. Unity is at least ruling party is 60. We're at war. Unity is there, so we can't do that until we're at war. And basically, we're at war. Okay. Now, for a 15 overall boost, do we want to boost consumer goods by 15 for the war economy? Normally I don't do this as German. Part of the reason is the daily descent change. Part of it is money, but we're doing fairly well with money. Leadership is also another thing in this. Yeah, let's do that. So you can see the benefits that we've had by increasing that up there as high as we have. And now we need to increase that back up to 40. Yeah. As you can see, I've increased a few more coal mines just because of this, and things like we've just done. They're going to boost its coal usage, boost heavily its steel usage. Afghanistan, crude oil. Okay, that's nice. Oh, now it's up to that. Let's buy some more steel from the US. No, only one here. Just that much. We still have a much bigger reserve of coal. But I'm doing something about both the steel and the coal internally as well. Don't know if it's going to be enough. It'll help for sure. Now, unlike when we play as Germany, we won't, as long as we can maintain our links, we won't lose our ability to buy from the US unless something wacky happens. Okay, submarine engines have advanced. That's nice. Oh no, we want to keep that one going. It's this one here. Oh no, it's not even that one. Boy, hitting all the wrong things. Yeah. Those down. Keep those going because they're almost done. They grayed out. Okay, well. Yeah, small ship crew berthing. And we'll stop that. For now at least. Hopefully that will help us out. Free up more stuff. Okay, we should also do that, of course. The submarine classes have advanced. And grayed out there. Okay, well, good. Yeah, since we decided not to help Spain out as directly as I wanted to, well, they're still doing okay. Probably again, mostly because of Von Thoma stuck out here. But that's just my thoughts. Armor unit component arms. That's good, but we want to make sure our nation is well and truly well organized. Do that. That'll help with some of our tanks and other technologies, I believe. We're slightly in the positive there for the moment. Obviously, with a change or with some of these factories come online, that will change. But at least we're doing some production of capital ships and fighters. And yes, I'm fearful it's not enough. Okay, money for energy. No, thank you. Not at this time. Troop ship flotillas. That grayed out now? Oh, it just completed. Okay. Nice, but we'll let that go for the moment. Gun position, twin engine. We also need to do, well, we should be already doing that, but okay. And let's do radar. Get those up and going. Nationalist China. Decline, okay. Light cruiser escort rule. That's good, but we're gonna come over here and just generally get our radios better. And what decisions do we have? Fleet exposition. Didn't we already do those? Thought we would need to get the air show. Did we already do the air show now? Okay. Oh, we don't have enough planes yet. think we'll leave that for the moment. So what is our current... I think it was the lack of money that didn't let us get it done in time. I think it needs to be done in peacetime for the last German playthrough. Oh, they already scrolled past it. Oh, famous military power. Okay. No, we don't have that. Because if you get all three of those at once, or that's my understanding at least, then you get the famous military power. We need 24 more planes. Current production, that isn't going to happen too soon. Now, let's see here. Let's go up to Canada. And over to Australia. No, that isn't very much. By any chance, is New Zealand overproducing its coal at all? No, it's a little better. Yeah, not enough that they want to sell to me. No, thank you, Venezuela. All the way down at medium popularity. Government policies. We're going to appease them because that is historically basically what Britain did, which is a good thing. Okay, third Moscow show trial. They kill off a bunch more of their officers. We've already talked about that. Not even I'm going to beat that horse dead anymore. Let's go back and look at more infrastructure. Type developments. Thinking about these, but we're not doing that yet. By transfer, those are high on the priority list. Oh, we'll do agriculture. Oh, and we stole some Soviet blueprints. Let's see, we've got amphibious armor, level 1 now. How interesting. How interesting indeed. So we pushed out ahead there. We should also do that too. What we should research, of course. Give them crude oil for money. Okay. Submarine crew berthing has advanced, which allows research of several new types. That's good. Okay, but not at the moment. We will definitely see about that, but not at the moment. Okay, Britain Foreign Minister Anthony Eden considers Mussolini a unreliable gangster. He dislikes his government sending Lord Halifax on diplomatic missions abroad in his place. Eden resigns and is succeeded by Halifax, who is to be associated with the government's policy of appeasement. Okay, I just before that, who we have, okay, as foreign minister. So currently we have Anthony Eden, ideological crusader, which is nice to daily dissent removers and ruling party support. We will lose that, and we will gain him and improve relations with Germany. An apologetic clerk, daily dissent, national unity changes. Minus 5% national unity. Don't know if that's always right, because it says free press plus 10%, and the higher it is the better. And open society minus 10% is green, so I don't know. Some of those numbers are a bit, don't know. But okay, well, and we can't go back. He's been removed from the possibilities, and these are the same because they're both apologetic clerks. Okay, we don't have the cool. Oh, wrong tab. There we go. Now we're up to 82. Damn. That's high. That is high. See what happens when you lose a good minister? And fighter pilot training. That's good. We need good fighter pilots. We're going to let that one go. And mountain unit training. Not that we don't need, but I think we will shift it somewhere else. Give all these to research. Lots and lots to research here. I think my transport has made it here. Yes. And I'll go down and pick up this one. Rebase. We're taking them home. And I think just quite honestly forgot about these guys. Go up here and pick up rebase. Not that it's part of the reason I forgot is because we haven't been having colonial revolts. That's partly what I want to use these troops for, and get those others back so that they can fight in the real war in Europe, and use these guys, like I said, colonial revolts, and maybe deal with the Japanese and Burma, India theater kind of thing. Okay, con units. Not that we can't, it would be useful to continue to research those, but We'll leave that one there. These two will be enough to hopefully deal with problems in India. If they spring up again, that is. Not that they'd be enough to deal with those two alone, and they're fairly weak to deal with the Japanese or anything like that, but still. And we'll get these guys in. Okay, great peace demonstration. A great peace demonstration was held today in the capital when tens of thousands of people cheered the cabinet members and members of the opposition as they met to speak in public at today's event. The head of the government and leader of the opposition both spoke against involving the country in war and announced that this country will never agree to be dragged into a conflict against its will. The head of state also spoke, telling the people to rally behind the government and support the necessary measures designed to defend democracy and keep the motherland out of the war. Yeah, you heard my sigh there. Go back to my last diatribe on people, political leaders really wanting war. Yes, Hitler really did want war, and the upper echelons in the Nazi Germany really did want war. And I think they did, well, most of the German people were scared to death of a real war with France and Britain. They were scared to death. Now once it sort of happened, they all cheered joyfully, but they and the army were just scared to hell with the war. They wanted, of course, the Treaty of Versailles overturned, and largely with getting back the last of this, and maybe, getting back to Sudetenland and getting Austria and maybe getting Poland. That was all good. But the people in Germany were scared to death of going to war with France and Britain. They were elated once they won. They were patriotically going to fight for their country when it was just started out, but they were scared to death of it. But Hitler did want a war. Really, the warmonger, because this was sort of, we were going on the warmongers about, they were calling Churchill. You really think Churchill wants war? Yeah, he wants, and as I said, he wants a little war instead of a great big huge war. Now, if he had the choice of war or no war, he would pick no war so long as the peace and stability of the world wasn't compromised. Churchill wasn't one of these ideological crusaders, so we'll use the example that's fairly not controversial nowadays. North Korean nut jobs can go around and murder and butcher their population at will, and they can, I don't even know if they have a policy on homosexuality. Obviously, they murder homosexuals in Iran and Saudi Arabia, or at least those that practice homosexuality. They murder them there. People go into this complain about bathroom assignments in some of the states in America, but they don't complain about people murdering homosexuals in Saudi Arabia or Iran. So, to me, on the scale of whatever, that people complaining about bathrooms and they're not forcing anybody to go into any bathroom. They're just not forcing people to, well, okay, get off that. But, so you have a North Korea situation where government is just doing whack job, nut job, bad things. Churchill wasn't one of these people that wanted to go into everywhere in the world and clean up North Korea type situation just because they were awful. Oh, he might personally want them to be better, and he might want to personally help an opposition group or something like that, but that doesn't mean he wants to send Britain into every little war around the world. But when you see dangers like Germany, and all you do is to demonstrate for peace, and I don't know who these peace demonstrator organizers were. Obviously, I sort of know who they were in the Cold War situation, and that they were people that were favorable to the Soviet Union. That's who the leadership was. They thought the Soviet Union may be flawed, but it was the just society of the future that we want to embrace. So they want to wanted to help them. I don't know if these peace people were pro-Nazi, pro-communist, or maybe the leaders were just so sick to death of the great tragedy of the First World War. I'll grant them that it was a great tragedy and they don't want to see another one like that. I grant them that. But to have that without what is, and I don't, again, because I haven't read the details of this period. I've read articles and different bits and pieces and things. A lot of it is more dealing with once the war started and how people were thinking this, but sure. Telling people that the government necessary measures designed to defend democracy and keep motherland out of the war, but where? And announced that it will never again be dragged into a conflict against its will. Country will never agree to be dragged into a conflict against its will. What the hell does that mean? Will never agree to be dragged into a conflict against its will. Does that mean that you set up a mutual defense treaty, say, I don't know, with France? It goes, hey, if evil Nazi Germany invades you, we'll come and defend you. And then evil Nazi Germany comes in, and then the government goes, well, you know, we're not going to be dragged into a war in France against our will, because we didn't agree to having Germany to invade, because war is just a sport, and we just, you know, like it's a cricket match or a baseball game. You agree to show up or you don't. What? You know, so yeah, I can see that if you think France is doing something completely unreasonable, I don't know, let's say invading fascist Italy, let's just take that as a hypothesis, and then Germany decides to join the war and invade France, and you go, hey, we agreed to defend you, but we didn't agree to you going to war in fascist Italy, so we're not going to go into our defense agreement because you weren't acting the way we told you that if you do that, we won't support you. Okay, that I get. You know, so if France is doing some nut jobbery like that, they weren't going to be doing it at that time, but let's just take that as a hypothesis. Then, okay, I agree with that. But if you set up with a reasonable country, and if you set up a mutual defense agreement, let's just say, take a modern example, if the United States were to set up with a defense agreement with Georgia, and then Russia attacks, well, we've already agreed that if Russia attacks, we will defend Georgia. So it wouldn't, I guess, theoretically be against our will. So this treaty isn't against, or this demonstration isn't against treaties that are already in place. Now, of course, if we look at Georgia and go, hey, they're doing a lot of supporting terrorist attacks against Russia, maybe we shouldn't go into a defense agreement with Georgia. That would maybe be a reasonable thing to go, we like you, but you're behaving badly, so we're not going to agree to that treaty. Or if they were behaving well and we set up the treaty, and then a new government comes in power, and well, we can do what we want because America will come and protect us. And of course, we should have a good intelligence agency to see if they're behaving badly enough that if they start, you know, supporting terrorists in Russia or something like that, that might cause Russia to invade, or might cause, Turkey to invade, that we go, hey, knock that off, or we're going to publicly renounce our defense treaty with you. You know, okay, but if we have the treaty with Georgia, which the U.S. doesn't, I'm just using this as an example, obviously, whether we sort of kind of do have a treaty, though one person pointed out to me that supposedly it was if they were attacked by nuclear weapons, but I still don't know that that's really entirely the the general understanding that the Soviet Union has carved off large chunks of Ukraine, and we haven't honored our defense agreement with them. And I don't think that they were behaving badly towards either their own populace enough to justify intervention, or behaving badly towards Russia enough that we should have not honored in some way. That doesn't necessarily mean we put in U.S. divisions, but honor some way our defense, our treaty with Ukraine. But so this is against having any sort of mutual defense agreement with anybody. So if a Commonwealth nation like Australia is invaded by Japan, these people didn't want to come to Australia's aid. Whether I'm sort of excusing all the people on the street, because in 1938 we have war tensions coming up in March. Over this time, it's really more over the it's still too early for the most of the Sudetenland type stuff, but that was building, as you saw in Third Reich events. That was building. That wasn't quite yet the Sudeten crisis proper, and they didn't put a date to this, so this just may be sometime post some of the events. I don't know how this is triggered, but so I sort of excused the attendees because they don't want war, and I get them. But the people who are organizing this, and of course I just have what they sort of said here: the government supporters, necessary measures to defend democracy and keep the motherland out of the war. So that, or if this means, hey, if they start bombing us, we'll do what we have to keep them from bombing us in the way that we'll just give up and go to Mr. Hitler. What do you want? We'll give it to you if you just stop bombing us. Do you want part of Kent, or do you want Scotland? What do you want? We'll just give it to you. Just don't bomb us anymore. What do these people mean by, yeah, I know I'm ranting here and whatever. I hope you're not too upset. You can skip past this if you see me ranting with one of these screens and you want to skip forward, just skip forward until this screen goes away and my rant will be over. Note to future. So again, like I say, I'm not against the idea of people wanting peace, but at what price? Peace at what price? Peace for today, war for next year, next 10 years, war in the future. Just because if we can keep it from happening now, maybe we can keep it from happening in the future, and what, And this is the kind of stuff that I just don't get with these peace demonstration, anti-war demonstration. Now, I do sort of kind of get anti a specific war. If you think the U.S. going into Iraq was a bad thing, but you think, hey, we needed to go after the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and now you may be against how we're fighting the war in either one of both places, but you're for the war here because you're not just against all war, because we didn't bomb ourselves. I know a few nut jobs think that the U.S. bombed itself and flew those airplanes into buildings and set up bombs, but yeah, fire does melt steel. That's the way you make steel, is with fire. It's the way it happens, just so that you know, Rosie O'Donnell and other people. That's how you make steel, is with fire. And yes, jet fuel burning very hot in a contained space is that hot. It's not a couple of logs burning. And so if you just thought that the Iraq war against Saddam Hussein was unnecessary, okay, I get that too. It does sort of mean you're abandoning the people living there to their fate, but I get that because, again, I'm not for trying to go to war to save everybody on the planet. Meaning if China decides to, kill all the people in one of their western provinces, I would go to an anti-China demonstration, but I'm not necessarily wanting to go to war with China just to stop a genocide by China because China has nuclear weapons and it would be a bloody mess if the U.S. were to go to war with China over them massacring a bunch of people. We might shoot a few Chinese ships, and they might shoot a few of ours over incidents out at sea. That's a different matter. That isn't going to war to try to crush the nation to stop a mass genocide somewhere. It's a little different thing. But, so, yeah, I can see that you'd be against a particular war, but just the idea of no war anywhere is just idiotic, and that the people at the top know it, and they have another agenda. Again, like I don't know this agenda, whether it's right, left, or just people so traumatized by the last war that they see any sort of peace, even a Hitler peace or a Stalin peace ruling many countries, including their own, better than going at that war. Okay, if that's what they're saying, fine, but okay, rant over. We will click that. Which didn't help much here, but okay. So, yeah, you know how I feel about these groups. But I think I'm rational about it. I think I say that if you have an objection, like now if it was I'm still going on about the game's rolling forward. If it was a war against no Brits in Spain, no British army in Spain, okay, I gotcha. You think you shouldn't go into there. That's a specific policy position that is reasonable. Whether it's the best one or not, that's another matter, because how would it have been different had, well, maybe it would have been a pro-Soviet, so I don't know if it would have been different or better, but how it would have been different had Britain intervened in Spain more heavily. So I can see that. Infantry unit training, okay, and that would be that one, and oh no, that's this one. Infantry unit training. Okay. Now, let's move it up to there. And medium fuel tank research has advanced. That's good. And it opens up a bunch of these. We're going to leave those for the moment. And we're going to upgrade our infantry guns. I just don't know whether these are useful enough. Whether they're useful or whether... Morrow. Oh, Edward R. Morrow. Okay. Naval Organization. Let's not see them being useful. Okay. When Edward R. Morrow, as he's often referred to, or more of his full name, went to London in 1937. He had no background in journalism. As a director of European operations for CBS, he wasn't even supposed to be on the air. That changed in March 38. Morrow had hired William L. Shire. You may have read some of his books on the Third Reich. I just recognize the name. But that's a German-speaking experienced but out-of-work reporter to cover the continent and arrange broadcasting from his base in Vienna. On March 12th, Shire was first reported to learn of the Anschluss, Austria's impending annexation by Germany. Barred by the Nazis from broadcasting, Shire flew to London to make his report. Morrow came to Vienna on March 13th. Morrow made the first news broadcast of his career, reporting from the Austrian capital. This is Edward Murrow speaking from Vienna. It is now 2:30 in the morning, and Herr Hitler has not yet arrived. No one seems to know just when he will get here, but most people expect him sometime around 10 o'clock in the morning. Edward R. Murrow. Okay. The Germans are becoming troublesome. I like the way they did that photo. That is very good. Very good. I don't know whether that was the Black Ice team that did the merging of the photos or they found it somewhere else, but either way, it's very good. So. Murrow's, William L. Shire books are very good on the Third Reich. They are a bit dated, because obviously he was doing historical research, but as well as basing it on his own experiences, and as well as talking to people, you know, that had experienced it too. It's just sort of research, but it's also just going from their memories, which is a bit different. They give them money for a lot of energy. No, thank you. Hopefully these, well, those just came due. We'll see how that changes the steel situation. Okay, commander decision making. Either way. Better training for officers. Direct fire unit command and control advance. Good. That will free up 2 slots. We're going to put those 2 here. But reading dated sources isn't in and of itself a bad thing. Newer sources aren't necessarily better sources. Sometimes they benefit with... Oh, we don't need these guys. Keep doing recon up here. They're not necessarily better sources. Newer sources... how do I want to put this? There's been certain strains of historical revisionism. There has also been more and more Marxist thought. Not necessarily that they're communists, but more and more Marxist thought has been entering historical education. I read what might have otherwise been a good book on the 18th century Britain, but they kept talking about everything in class terms. And I don't remember how far I got through it, but I don't think it was more than halfway through it. I just finally decided to stop reading it because it was just Marxist history. Not that I don't know that the author was in any way a communist. He might very well have been, I don't know. But his whole viewpoint of looking at this class versus that class, and it was a very sort of class history. And if you know Britain in the 18th century, it did not have those class distinctions. Oh, sure, if you were raised in a coal miner's home, you weren't going to become Lord so-and-so. That's absolutely true. But it was more of a regional identity or a interest group identity, as opposed to sort of the later working class, middle class, upper class, if you will, conflicts between them, because Britain just really wasn't organized that way. And so it just really just... And it's sort of taking, like, if you were of the one of the, you know, the lower class or the mass class, you must have, the way he was writing it, similar goals and objectives, and that those goals and objectives conflicted with your elites. And people back then just didn't see things that way. Yes, people wanted to have reasonably good housing, but what they understood to be good housing isn't necessarily what we today understand as expected to be good housing. And yes, people wanted a full belly, most assuredly. And of course, people wanted to make money, but that wasn't their driving motive to go to work or their driving motive to get up in the morning. They had a different social identity. They were often much more religious, and they found happiness in religion, yes, and that's what I think this author and Marx, the opiate of the masses, that they would view things that way, and so that you get various interest groups that they didn't see themselves as being exploited by the elites. Just because they were poor and the elites had money. And so, and this is, and this was a newish, now 10 or 20 years old probably, but much newer than like Shire's books. It's sort of a, we're taking our values of today and putting them back on people 200 years ago, and looking at their daily concerns and problems through our values and not through what they saw as their daily concerns and needs. And so newer books, again, I'm not even saying most of the writers and professors, though a lot, at least in America, a lot of the professors are communists. But even those that aren't, even those that are much more conservative in their mindset, a lot of authors are more conservative, they still are view things through this Marxist viewpoint that has infected historical thought. And I know this very well when looking at, because I've looked at in fairly good detail in Scotland, that there were very dirt poor people being ruled by people that were just a little bit richer than them, a little bit more well off, but you wouldn't call them even sort of middle class. And these people had identities, goals, and objectives that weren't out to conflict with other classes. They were conflicting with other regions and other culture groups. And so they just didn't see things in those terms. Money was good, yes, but money wasn't why you did things. And I know this very much to be, and he was looking at Britain as a whole. I've looked at details of Scotland, as well as read some very interesting books also on Britain in the 18th century. Now that changes in the late 19th century considerably, with the rising standards of living, as well as with the lowering standards of living. That's sort of maybe a dichotomy, but people were starting to make more money, could buy more things, and so your ability to, say, buy clothing or something, because clothing, you made more money and clothing was cheaper because it being made on a big the cloth was being made on big factory looms instead of small hand looms, so clothing was cheaper, and you were able to make more money that way, so that was rising. But your living conditions, from being, yes, in a thatched roof sort of cottage, if you will, but out in the countryside, that sure, it had smells of pigs and horses and cows and whatever else, but as even a lot of us might think, a more natural smell, versus sort of living in the industrial choked factory towns where you had the coal dust coming down because they didn't have any idea about coal scrubbers or even, the basic things to keep some basic clean air, and you didn't have basic setups for clean water, so you had all these people living in pooping in this very bad conditions in the 19th century. So although they were making more money, they were, in some ways, their standards of living for a lot of these people were going down, and so that, you know, with the change of the economies, so that there were starting to be more class identity conflicts between the elites and the people, because it was really moving much more so from, and again going back to the 18th century, sure, the elites wanted to make money, and the elites did have much more money than the regular people, but a lot of their wealth or their prestige or their power was based on the people that they took care of, and those people in essence gave them power, whether it was voting power to vote somebody into parliament, or whether it was, and I'm not even talking in the Middle Ages, but shall we say strengthen your workforce to oppose other groups. So you took care of your people. And so it was a different arrangements between the elites. And not all the elites were Duke so-and-so. Some of them didn't even have a title, but they possessed a significant amount of land. They had a significant amount of people working for them. And it was your sort of, if you will, an extended family feeling situation, and people lived and worked in that thing. So that changes into the 19th century, where the person is no longer valuable as his loyalty to you, and that he's now just valuable as a wage, you pay a wage to, and if he doesn't work out, because he's often no longer a craftsman, even a simple craftsman, you can fire him and get a new person to replace him. So then you start to see much more the exploitive nature. Then some of Marx's arguments of class conflict are coming about that he was seeing and writing about, but that is not really how history prior to the Industrial Revolution, for the most part, existed. So this is why Marx is wrong in a lot of his history and what was wrong in his future prognostications. I firmly believe that. I know a lot of people don't. Bernie Sanders doesn't. Other people don't believe Marx is wrong, or maybe wrong in the details, but right in the overall progress. I think Marx is wrong. But he was viewing it through this coming, emerging, and yeah, he talked about that, but this class conflict and class identity based on economic status and set up. So that's, you know, revisionist history and other histories. Now, obviously, some of the newer historical books access more, archives and get better information. And the big one, of course, is the sort of ultra/enigma code secrets that were kept for so long that the British and the Americans had that. So prior to that, all books written, including like Montgomery's history of World War II, which I've read, and he knew about at some point, not when he was some of his earlier days, but eventually, of course, he was in on the ultra secrets. He was knowing how good his sources of information were, because he knew what they were, where a lot of the other commanders discredited the ultra secrets because they didn't know how good they were, because they couldn't be informed of this. So in Montgomery's writing the history of his war, that's supposed to be his definitive, clear statement of what happened, he left out that ultra existed and that he knew about it and that it informed his actions. So his book is knowingly wrong because he couldn't divulge the secrets, because it's still a British secret when Montgomery wrote his book. So obviously he lied. He had to, because it was a secret. But so it either makes Montgomery out to be a better general than he was, because he's not saying, oh, I was reading the mail to Hitler, so I knew, the mail to Hitler and the mail to Rommel, so I knew what he was going to at least theoretically be doing, or I knew how much supplies he was going to be sent next month, or whatever he might have known. So I knew I could do this, or, so he doesn't quite say that. So he comes off looking as a better general than he probably really was in his own book, without necessarily Montgomery trying to, though I think he to some degree did want to make himself look good, but not necessarily with him trying to look good. It just, he had to do that. So you get books written after Ultra or Enigma, however you want to say that, is out, so that reevaluates history. So Newer histories in some ways can be better, in some ways can be worse. It is good to read if you're going to get into the details that I have gotten into over my lifetime. It is good to read many different books from different periods on a subject because, like as I've said, I've studied a lot and in detail the 18th century. When I've read books written, most of the ones I would say would be the earliest I've read most are mid 19th, early 19th century. I've got a few of those on the 18th century, and then you start getting into the very early 20th century books. I probably got 20 or 30 of those, and I've read other ones. Their viewpoint then, in 1902, of what was happening in 1740 or something, is very different, very different from a author in 1970 or an author in 2000 writing about that exact same time period, and they write about it very differently, and they all have very good elements of truth. I mean, and sometimes they're not disputing a basic fact, but how they're viewing it and what materials they're using changes. And so they all view the history and its consequences and things in very different lights. So it's really good to see how, on a particular subject, how the viewpoints of it have changed over time. Okay. I'm sorry if it's boring you. I'm enjoying this, but I'm also trying to keep talking about things to keep you interested until the real action starts. But how I've looked at history and studied things, and it informs me and informs how I talk about this series, so it gives you an idea when I'm ranting on about different things. It comes from all of the stuff I've consumed over the years. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with me. I do appreciate that. Please post your comments. Also like the videos. Do appreciate that. And, hey, any of the topics I bring up, if you disagree, agree, and why, I'd love to hear from that. See you next time.